We are glad to have a lot of people together with us today, and we want to excuse Paul. Maybe some of you are wondering where is he, and in a VUCA webinar, VUCA is happening. Unfortunate situation make him unable to be with us, but we agreed all together that we'll make VUCA 2.0 when Paul will be with us together. So we are in an interesting moment where from some areas it seems that the times cool down. On the other hand, for many of us, uncertainty is quite big, and we have Basav with us to talk a bit about how we use VUCA concept in business, in leadership, in coaching and mentoring. And we also invite each of you to contribute with questions. And from time to time, if you have something to point out, you can raise a hand and you can be part of the discussion. For sure, at the end of our talk, we'll give some time for questions and answers. So,
I'm sorry, I'm working on it.
you are still working on?
Yes, and I think it hits with the day constantly. Now my laptop is incredibly slow. As you see there, it says just preparing, but we're gonna get this one also working. That's not gonna be that.
No problem.
So that's another chance for you to add a couple of more details about why we wanted to start this discussion on VUCA and why do we find it interesting and as an important topic.
So,
Vlad, want to give a bit of information on the background on how we got to this topic? Or you want to keep it for the live? By the way, I'm going to push now there you go. Button.
We are live now?
Yes.
Okay.
So, wonderful. I'm going to say it one more time because Carmen, I don't think she was with us. So if you want to switch off your video or anything because you don't feel comfortable with being on the recording or on the live thing, all good. We don't take it personal. We just...
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Hello.
Thank you. So
I might because I have kids in the background as well.
All understandable. Thank you so much for being there with us. So that's what the one thing that is going to be lovely to have so many people and interact. Vlad, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I would like to start and invite Basav to tell us a bit about his experience and how he come together with VUCA concept and learn about it.
I can do that. So when Cristina and Vlad invited me to participate in this, I thought back a little bit on my own career and the various times that either one or more of the elements of VUCA applied to me and what I went through myself at the time. And you know, I mean, clearly the uncertainty element of VUCA has occurred many times during that career. But I clearly remember one episode or one assignment that I had during my career, which was when I was assigned to Moscow in the mid to late 90s. Now, I'm assuming that Romania in the mid to late 90s was also fairly chaotic. But so was Russia, and so was Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan and all these places, right? And I was sent across by my company to manage the taxation of the company in these countries. Now, just to give you a backdrop, Russia, this was in the oil field service business. So Russia had just about opened up their oil markets to the rest of the world. They were wholly unfamiliar with how international companies operated and what impact taxation could have on international companies. And it's not just Russia, by the way. If there was any one of those countries which was a little ahead, it was Russia. I mean, the other countries like Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan and Turkmenistan were even several steps behind. Clearly, they were just coming out of this the Soviet period and whatever was associated with that. And I still remember, we had a tax inspection in Kazakhstan, and to fly from Moscow to Almaty at the time was an overnight 5-hour flight. And the situation was so volatile that every time I took that flight, I didn't know whether I would end up in a Kazakh jail by the end of that flight. Because the tax office were aggressive. It was within the purview of the law to come and lock up your company, right? And they did. They put seals on the company doors. And here I was, I don't know, 28 or 29 years old at the time. And I couldn't even call anybody in the rest of the company because they had no idea. They had never experienced such volatility in any of these places where Schlumberger, the company I worked for, where they operated. And we did operate in many places in sub-Saharan Africa, in many parts of Asia. And there were uncertainties associated with these geographies as well. But this was a wholly new ballgame, right? So that particular assignment that I had probably had every single element of VUCA involved in it, and probably to an extreme. It is not the most comfortable feeling when you get onto a flight and you don't know whether you're coming back or whether you're going to end up in a Kazakh jail, right? So that is the first thing that occurred to me, and I don't know whether that answers your question, Vlad. But now that I look back, what strikes me is how great it would have been to have a sparring partner to just offload my thoughts to, and how much more confidence that would have given me in order for me to do whatever it is that I wanted to do. So this whole coaching, or bringing in this coaching element in a VUCA environment is extremely relevant, I feel.
Basav, I have to admit that when you were telling that story, I remembered, I kind of like had this feeling of it relates so greatly to doing actuarial services in Albania, where sitting in the office of the company that I was working with, we were doing those services from a company on site. And at some point, hearing a very loud noise, we got panicked because we had no idea what's happening. When we're talking about the moments when there was still a war somewhere in that country.
Right.
And everyone was completely relaxed. Oh, it's okay. They looked out the window. It's okay. They just a bomb just hit the building across the street. It's all good. Yes. And we just froze because it was unimaginable for us that people can be so relaxed in those conditions. And now when you were talking about it, realizing, those are moments when you do need somebody next to you to say, so how do I work on this topic? How do I look at it? How do I analyze that situation? And how do I find a way to work with all of that volatility and uncertainty, especially in those cases?
No, and that's a very, the analogy that you brought up, Cristina, is actually very relevant because, we often tend to think of VUCA as something that's happening outside us, the external environment. But if you take your Albanian example, the situation was not particularly volatile for the Albanians. It was volatile for you.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's how you perceive it inwardly that creates this VUCA.
Yeah.
You know, the uncertainty doesn't have to arise because there's uncertainty outside. Uncertainty arises because you feel uncertain. You know, so there doesn't have to be a particularly explosive environment in which VUCA applies. You know, VUCA applies a lot inside you. And the explosive environment actually exists within you, not necessarily outside you. And you can't ignore that. You can't assume that just because the external environment is stable, there is no VUCA going on within you. If you like.
And there's a beautiful comment in the chat going in the direction of showcasing that adaptability for a VUCA environment. And I think that's the same thing when it comes of VUCA outside of you or inside of you. How do you adapt? How do you bring in that component of being flexible with what's happening? And now I would go also a step further with a concept that it's more and more present in coaching, which is resilience.
Very true. Resilience, or grit, as it's called sometimes, you know. Again, I mean, some of us are clearly more resilient than others by nature, and that gives us a good head start. But there is no reason why the less resilient can't be made to feel more confident and therefore become more resilient. And that's, I think, where an engagement like coaching can add a lot of value.
You said something in there that was extremely important to highlight, and that is, indeed, resilience is like a muscle that you, as long as you start flexing it, then it grows. That was a component of what you just said. I resonated and I picked it up immediately in the sense of true. That's the same thing with VUCA also, because if you look at the beginning of this, I don't know, situation, you know, you can perceive it as a crisis if you don't do anything about it. But if you find your way and you adapt, anything can be a manageable situation. So last year, pretty much at the same time, it was a completely different VUCA environment.
It was. And, you know, this adaptation is also a strange thing. When you're forced to, as a species, we have always adapted. Which is why we've survived. And there is that element, you know, when the lockdown first happened, all of us had to adapt. There was no choice but to adapt. And we all adapted in our own ways, but we had to adapt. And life was just not the same. The question then is that as life gets more familiar or returns to a more familiar pattern or starts looking more familiar in different ways, does that urge to adapt still exist, or does it lessen? And I think that's where the danger is, you know, because if you bring it to how companies have adapted, right, rather than individuals, if you look at organizations, at least among the leaders that I've spoken to and my own customers and whoever else I've interacted with, the way I see it is that organizations have been divided into two kind of attitudes, if you like, in this whole thing. There are organizations which cannot wait to get back to how things were. And again, I'm not being pejorative in any way about it, right? It is what it is. I mean, there are organizations who just cannot wait to get back to how things were. That is what is familiar, that is what is comfortable, and that's what they're used to operating. Those are the circumstances that they're used to operating under. But there are also other organizations who continue to adapt and who believe that this thing is not going to end with just working from home. That is not the end game here. You know, working from home is a mere step to something which is larger. So what else do they need to do to remain relevant in the future? And these are questions that they're asking themselves, right? And often through the coaching engagement as well. And what seems to be the case, and this is purely anecdotally, obviously I haven't done any research on this, but purely anecdotally, is that what determines where a company falls, whether it's in the first category or the second category, is dependent on the leadership and on the organizational culture. So if the leadership embraces change, embraces the ability to adapt, and adaptability becomes a culture within the organization, they are much more comfortable with adopting the second approach, where they start asking themselves, what else do I need to do to remain relevant in the future? Whereas if leadership isn't like that, then the companies tend to swing towards the first approach of how do we get back to how things were. And again, I'm not suggesting that one is better than the other. It's just that there are two ways to do it.
Yeah. And you said something at the beginning, and I remembered we spoke last time, and there was a brilliant article that you were mentioning, and I do recall that you also did a piece on something similar, and I was wondering if you were willing to expand a bit more on that one. We were talking about species and adapting and developing, so...
Which brilliant article? I haven't written too many brilliant articles.
Oh, yes, you did. Oh, yes, you did. You had a nice piece that you told us about it. It was one, so initially the talk came from an article that was from, I think it was Harvard Business Review.
I see. Is this about our inner apes wanting company? Indeed. I mean, this is, this is an unknown, actually. There is obviously a lot of conversation going around about how we are losing social capital within companies because we are not meeting. Companies are also a social hub, and they used to be a social hub. And a lot of creativity and innovation happened in companies because we were a social hub, right? It's part of who we are. It's part of our animal instincts, if you like. The fact that we seem to be unable to do that in the way we are used to appears to have had an impact on the creativity and innovation. It's not about adapting to continue to do things as we do. It's about taking us to the next level as well, right? And that does not happen without creativity and innovation. So how can we recreate that environment which used to be so conducive to creativity and innovation in this remote environment? And that's a question that we all need to apply and find answers for. But what we cannot do is not be creative and innovative. So that was really the nub of the article that you're referring to. And if you look at evolutionary biology, although I'm no evolutionary biologist, but what appears to be the case is that as a species, primates are very social, are one of the most social species around. And as primates, our inner ape craves that company. And even among primates, the Homo sapiens seems to be even more social, as one of the most social mammals, in fact. So we can't discount that. It is within us. So how do we now adapt? How do we persevere? And how do we handle our own uncertainties in order to overcome this lack of social capital that we are staring at? And, a lot of, clearly there are no answers yet. The answers are still emerging. But a lot of it seems to center around how do you inject some level of confidence in people to overcome this uncertainty. And it appears that a lot of this can be achieved through what is called psychological safety. I don't know whether you've heard of this term, but essentially what it is to create an environment where people feel that they are included and they feel that they are safe to either contribute or challenge without any fear of marginalization or embarrassment or punishment. And if you can create that environment, you give the confidence to your people to start connecting, and then maybe we can adapt to start creating and innovating once again.
Take what you're saying, and I just got a picture in mind, because you're talking about multiple layers in there. Actually, you'll have that psychological safety that you create for your own employees, so they can handle this VUCA environment that resides around them with their own uncertainties. And then you have another layer that you need to create that safety at the level of the organization, where they feel like they can continue to innovate and produce something, considering everything else that is uncertain around them. And plus, there's a different layer when we talk about society. And ask, how can we as a society perceive this as still as an environment where we can continue to be looking forward and innovating and growing, despite all of the uncertainty that comes and will still come. It's not, like you said, it's not going to be over and then we go back. We don't push a button and everything resets. But it's an adaptability.
Indeed, and it's also a reframing of several relationships. You know, because up until now, or at least in the last 50 years or so, how corporations have evolved, is that corporations, you know, other than that meeting point where corporations have to pay tax to the government, they don't seem to work together. You know, the government works on its own, the corporations work on its own, the people within the companies work on their own, and so on and so forth. So they're pretty siloed operations. There is perhaps a reframing that is required, which needs organizations and corporations to engage with society differently and qualitatively differently, right? Now, this could mean many things. And again, there are no clear answers, but it could mean many things. And I think at least the leaders I've spoken to, etc., they do seem to get it, right? They do seem to understand it. They also agree. The challenge, of course, lies in how do you pivot from an environment where you are so used to being measured on short-term metrics to starting to engage with society qualitatively differently, which seems to be the need of the hour. How do you do that? You know, and clearly there are no answers. But again, whenever you have a situation where there are no answers, the ground is fertile for an engagement like coaching. You know, and it's not because the coach knows the answers either, by the way, right? But at least they can work together through the problem and try and understand where the answers lie.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point. And I saw also earlier Vlad being prepared with a couple of questions as leaning forward. And so I was wondering, what was his take on all of this?
I was thinking on your first picture on the slide, and I seen VUCA as an reference that help us to navigate when we are in chaos, or when we are lost in desert, or we are lost on the ocean. And one of the questions is, do VUCA as a repairs question that we can ask around them can help us to get the right way through what we need to go, or it could make us to get frozen of bad times and not be able to adapt to change. And I wonder what Basav consider that it's a useful approach in coaching in such situations.
So, sorry, I don't think I understood the question, Vlad.
So, do you think VUCA could be used as a compass that will help us to navigate through times like this, or it could be make worse, making us frozen?
The answer to that is largely dependent on you, right? I mean, both eventualities could occur. Of course, uncertainty can freeze us. Of course it can, but it is dependent on us to unfreeze ourselves and to look at it as an opportunity, right? You know, there was a poem there was a poet called William Butler Yeats back in the early 20th century, and he wrote this poem just after the Spanish flu, which was around 100 years back, right? And two of his lines within that poem actually strike me as very resonant in these times, which is that the best are full of uncertainty, while the worst are full of passionate conviction. You know, so there is, the first thing to acknowledge to yourself is that it is perfectly normal to feel uncertain. And now that feeling uncertain does not make you inferior in any way. It is a normal thing to feel. But having acknowledged that you feel it, what are you going to do about it? And VUCA, by the way, we are speaking of VUCA as if it's something outside the normal. Maybe VUCA is the normal, you know, and if you're going to freeze up because of uncertain situations, those uncertain situations are going to come more and more often. So you better be prepared to unfreeze yourself. Otherwise, you know, you're soon going to be frozen in an icebox.
Yeah. Like you said before about the companies, and most of us know that it's the same with people. Some of them are navigated like the fish in water through VUCA times, while for others there is a strong need for having certainty, to have a clear horizon, to keep things in the way they used to be.
Look, I mean, who among us would not like clear horizons and certainties and so on and so forth? I mean, it makes our lives much easier, right? All of us. Who wouldn't like it? The reality is that throughout the history of mankind, that has not been the case. You know, we might delude ourselves into thinking that, you know, we have a very certain, regardless of COVID, forget about COVID, even before COVID, we could have deluded ourselves into thinking that, yes, of course, you know, I know exactly what's going to happen 2 years from now. But how true is that anyway? And consciously or unconsciously, the reason we are all here today is because we have managed to navigate through VUCA situations in the past. So it's not that and come on, I mean, in Romania, after the recent history of Romania, all of you Romanians have seen things that most of us have never actually seen. So, you know, when somebody from outside Romania talks to Romanians about VUCA, there is a lot that I don't know that a lot of you have gone through, much more extreme conditions, you know. So, you know, you can very credibly turn around and say, actually, I, Basav, don't know what I'm talking about because I haven't seen the 90s in Romania. And that would be true.
You're right. We have a question from Carmen.
Question from?
Carmen.
Hi, hi.
Hello, Carmen.
My name is Carmen. Just as a, you know, as a COVID situation and the fact that the reality is uncertainty knocks on everyone's door every day. every day. Like we don't live in a certain environment as such, but we're trying to control it, which is the opposite of the uncertainty. Now, would it be a great tool for coaching? Like I'm asking because I've used it and I got great results. The CIA model, the CIA tool. What can you control? What can you influence? What can you accept? And what can you learn from it? Have you found that beneficial?
I think it is essential to, when you're in this coaching relationship, right? Firstly, you need to explore what is causing this uncertainty. And again, as I said, the uncertain situation does not need to exist outside. It exists inside, right? So what is it that is causing this uncertainty? And how can you look at ways to mitigate that? And the CIA tool that you mentioned is a tool to do that with, for sure. It's one among a few, but eventually it is through the questioning process, through the inquiry process, how do you get your coachee to address the uncertainties that they were feeling with a little more confidence? The uncertainty is not going away. What you might help in taking away is allowing him to take or her to take that step forward to address it. Right? And if through the CIA tool, it gives them that confidence to take that step forward, well and good. Or you can look at other ways to do it. But they have to take that step forward. That is the critical element.
I'm wondering in there, it's a beautiful question and a beautiful area to look into, Carmen. Thank you for raising it up. I'm wondering also in those situations, how can we also support as a coach our clients to look at the things that they can still control and balance that feeling of being, I don't know if lost is the right word right now, but that feeling of I don't have stuff in control, but actually shifting that focus towards something that they can do, look at objectively and say, these are things that keeps me grounded and keep giving me the impression that I have something still under control, and expand from there, grow from the resources that they have already to work towards a better feeling of managing those things. So
true. Eventually you've got to get to the core of the problem. What is it that is making them feel uncertain, really? Right? And you're right. I mean, when these situations arise, people get overwhelmed and they often lose what is at the core of that uncertainty. So as a coach, what helps often is if you can peel off these layers of overwhelmedness, if you like, even if that's a word even, but peel it off and try and understand what actually is the cause of that uncertainty, and then try and address that. You know, take them back to other times, perhaps, when they felt a similar way, and what did they do? Yeah. You know, anything to make them take that step. And once you take the first step, as we all know, things tend to become easier.
There's another thing mentioned in the chat, and thank you, Olga, for that one. And I like this part of saying, with the idea that VUCA is normal. There are some things that we can say about the future, that it will be different and that it will surprise us. So definitely the idea of surprising fits also with coaching, because I think that all of the coaching relations, they do surprise both of the participants in the sense of that something exists and something gets uncovered in there. Olga, do you wanted to add something on this one? Because I've seen you leaning forward, wondering if there's something else.
No. I'm like agreeing with everything I said. So no. I just resonated with what Basav said, that VUCA is maybe not abnormal, but kind of the new normal, as we started to call, to call those times. Maybe it's something that we have to keep in mind, that, well, a lot of things can change. a lot of things can be, you know, different tomorrow. And I just wanted to point out that I'm somehow resonating with what he said. And it will be important to know how to navigate all those uncertainties, unfamiliar situations, and get prepared for that. So whether we do it by anticipating some you know, options, or choosing coaching as a solution at a particular situation that we are dealing with, or, you know, no matter what would be the solution, for sure the future is, yeah, unpredictable. I'm not saying a news, definitely, but I'm pointing out that, well, yeah, we have to stay a bit alert to the unpredictability in general.
Thank you, Olga. Indeed, that category of unpredictability, it's one area that VUCA looks at very nicely. And there's one thing that we did in the prep for this discussion, and I'll let Vlad to explain more, because he looked also in different models that exist besides VUCA. I was wondering, Vlad, if you want to share a bit with what you've discovered. I think that would be interesting to add more perspectives on this one.
Indeed, talking with Basav and Paul and Cristina about VUCA, we look a bit on the history. And VUCA started, as we used to know it, as volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And just 2 years ago, a professor defined a new VUCA with vision, understanding, courage, and adaptability. And we call it VUCA 2.0. And to be honest, for me, it seemed a bit more positive and in a way of looking for solutions rather than getting stuck on problems. And then on some research, we find about a new concept that is called brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible, which define more or try to define a bit more of what we face this day. However, talking together, we consider that vision and understanding is very important for going further and doing better. But besides these two, we think that what we learned from last year is that community and accountability are much more important in helping us to go further. And I want to see what is your input, and also I want some reflection from Basav as well, because in my opinion there are some forces that make us to get sometimes stuck. Should we have goals, or should we let go of the goals in front of unknown? Should we live on now and here, like we do in and think in coaching, or should we take care about sustainability? So there are a few questions, and I would like to see what is your input on this. Is community and accountability something that is essential in these days or not?
So the question was to me, presumably.
For you.
Well, again, I mean, you pin me down to give you binary answers, which makes me uncomfortable and a little bit VUCA myself. But I mean, you know, you talk about spending time in the here and now or sustainably. I don't necessarily see the conflict. you can spend time in a certain way here and now, which contributes to the future sustainability. Right? We've talked about community anyway. We've talked about how organizations perhaps need to engage with society differently. The courage bit is very relevant. I kind of inferred that when I said within the coaching engagement, you try and get your coachee to take that first step. That generally tends to happen when they have a little bit of an injection of courage. In a leadership context, a useful question to ask ourselves as leaders would be how courageous we are to abandon the practices that has made us successful so far. Because there is a need to do that. There is a need to do that every once in a while. Otherwise, you will not grow. And it's an incredibly difficult thing to do, because for each of us, there are certain things that have made us successful, and we all believe that that is our own magic formula for success. And that is not a sustainable thought. So I think courage comes into play a lot when you start asking yourself these questions about how courageous you are to abandon these practices that have made you successful. It also comes with other things, a classic trap that many leaders fall into is surrounding themselves with people who think like them. I mean, as people, that's who we hang around with. Even in our private lives, we tend to hang around with people who think like us, right? But what you end up doing, therefore, is you end up constructing some sort of echo chamber around you. And that means even more that you will be less and less courageous to abandon the things that you've done in the past. So these are traps that perhaps we need to watch out for. Look at your calendar and find out how many appointments you have with people whom you violently disagree with. And why is that? Why does that need to be a bad thing? By the way, it's equally applicable to me as a British national living in Romania. I have not met a single person who voted for Brexit. And that cannot be a good thing. It cannot be a good thing that the only British people I know in Romania are the ones who voted to remain within the European Union. Nobody voted to get out. But surely there are some people out there who also voted to Brexit. And why don't I know them?
Yeah, I really like this perspective that you brought in with the courage to objectively assess where you situate yourself in this entire ecosystem, like you said. Am I being exposed also to the other things that I might not know about? So the unknown unknowns, and how do I perceive them, and how do I incorporate them in my path for growing at the end of the day? And indeed, right now it brings us back to what you were saying at the beginning in the relation with a coach. As a leader especially, and a leader especially going now through a time of change or adaptability, and looking at how are those leaders being exposed to uncomfortable situations, to probably, to provoke a bit that thinking, I would say. I don't see necessarily in the sense of generate conflict, but to provoke the way they are thinking and looking objectively at situations. Because at the end of the day, innovation comes from that uncomfortable state, not from the warm and cozy.
You look differently at situations, right? You look at situations differently, and as those of us who are coaches on this panel know very well, part of our role is really to challenge the beliefs that the coachee may have and how those are acting as barriers to the coachee's own progress. And you have to be prepared to do that. You have to be prepared to make your coachee feel uncomfortable. There has to be enough trust in that relationship where if you make them feel uncomfortable, it is recognized as an opportunity for them to grow, right? So, and challenging belief systems is critical to that. How do you challenge belief systems? How do you use your process of inquiry to do that? And how do you then hold them accountable? Talking on your accountability point, how do you then hold them accountable to move to wherever they want to get to?
Mm-hmm. And adding on that one is, how do you help support them define that internal accountability system?
Sure. And if that's how they want to be held accountable to strengthen their own internal accountability system, then you help them through that too.
Yeah. I like the comment also in the chat from Carmen saying words create worlds.
Yes. There's a whole industry out there making up these 4-letter or 3-letter acronyms, which, you know, I wish I was as clever as them. I think that would make us a lot of money.
And I'm wondering right now if we should open up a bit discussion also to the bigger audience and ask, what would be your thoughts in what we've covered until now? Please, Livio. Oh, we don't hear you yet. You still need to. Yep. No, not yet. Let me see if I can help you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, wonderful.
Great. So I'm biased in what I'm gonna say because of my history and because I'm working on writing something about this. But talking about uncertainty, I believe it's the word of any entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are not, people think entrepreneurs are big risk takers or whatever. It's actually, research showed that it's not the fact. They are masters of dealing with uncertainty. And connected to what Basav said just before, that we need to sometimes have the courage to abandon the things that made us already successful. It's everybody, it's a lot of talk about reinventing yourself and so on. And all this is centered about one idea, that in the end, in our DNA, we are all entrepreneurs. As a matter of fact, we started our professional lives with some resources and we made choices in a very uncertain environment. So in coaching, I would say opening your client's awareness, and again, Basav mentioned that he went through that actually from the beginning of his professional career. In every major career change, there was a lot of uncertainty and he or she had to cope with that. So as I'm an entrepreneur, I always have been an entrepreneur. I do use frameworks about entrepreneurship in coaching. It's just an idea. That's it.
Thank you, Livio.
Livio, am I allowed to say that unfortunately or fortunately, we might know a bit about you? And I would add on this one and use the chance of saying, realize now it would be wonderful to get your view on your VUCA environment when you did a small trip with a boat. Let's just call it. I think you need to explain a bit more what I mean with a small trip with a boat.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So for those who don't know, I crossed the Atlantic in a sailing boat together with my wife and my 4-year-old son. It's not that VUCA world. It's a lot about planning, and of course, sometimes unexpected things happen. We only had one unexpected storm along the way. I'm not sure if my entrepreneurial skills helped or not, but it's just you keep going. I didn't know about this CIA model. You see what you can do, and you accept that some things you cannot do and hope for the best. Honestly, this is it. So we had a microstorm. It was a microstorm. That's why it was not forecasted. But it was a thunderstorm. Now, a thunderstorm in the middle of the Atlantic, you are like a 23-meter thunderbolt waiting to be hit by a lightning bolt / waiting to be hit by a lightning. So in that situation, honestly, just accept and do whatever you know. You pray, you wait, you meditate, you know it will go away. So in the end, it's the same. It's the same. It will go away. Things will change or not. Like another boat, a few, like 20 miles away from us, got hit by a lightning, but they still made it to the other end of the ocean. So it's just that relating to what's happening now, in 1 year, the whole paradigm of work has changed profoundly. And when the crisis will be over, it will change one more time. Yeah, we will go to hybrid models that will bring new dynamics, more challenges. So keep moving. That's all.
The sailing analogy is actually a very good one, because there is, I understand, there is this theory among sailors is that, sometimes when the unexpected happens, just get to the next step and just take it, one step at a time. And it's this whole concept of having the courage to do the next thing.
Yeah.
And don't worry about the end, don't worry about the other side of the Atlantic. Just take your boat to the next position and then wait. And whatever Livy was saying is something that actually all of us do. We do eventually accept, and we do eventually do whatever we can to, whatever's within our control to change. But it's these other feelings that are in our head which tend to overwhelm us. And that's the onion analogy. You've got to start peeling off those other things,
Thank you for that one, and thank you for being open, Livia, and also share a bit more from your VUCA experience, because I think indeed that analogy also with the sailing boat, it is a beautiful one in general to take the analogy further and say, no, that's how we all sometimes feel on a stormy Atlantic. And I'm wondering, I saw that Bogdan put his video on, and I'm wondering, I'm sorry, if you wanted to add something or you had a question.
No. Okay.
Lovely. We're really happy that it's an interesting conversation for you also, because it's always a good signal for us. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. What are your thoughts? Anyone else? I see Diana, or anyone else that doesn't have a video, and you can always put on your mic and share questions or thoughts.
Or if you can speak, you can type in the chat.
Okay, if you mention my name, let's say something. So talking about making coaches or maybe anybody else uncomfortable or put them in an uncomfortable situation, I was thinking about a situation like boredom, when many people get bored from different reasons. And I could notice that is a wonderful situation to grow and to be creative. I experienced on myself this situation, and I remembered that was Einstein's case when he discovered the theory of relativity. He was so bored at his job that after he completed his task every day, he just started putting on the paper his thoughts, making some drawings, and he discovered that theory. And I noticed this at my students. Most of them sometimes are very bored, and then I say, okay, it's the right moment to put on the paper what you are thinking about this, and let's see what is the outcome. And it was amazing what the outcomes were. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana, for your thoughts. Actually, it was exactly what was in my mind, because I saw in the last year a lot of people coming with a lot of new ideas to reinvent their businesses or to find ways to protect. A lot of innovation was happening around this. Even the vaccine, which is ready as fast as possible and much faster than usually. On the other hand, I see people who become anxious, not about words like agility as was before, but now it happened to meet people who told me that they hate the word disruptive.
Yes, but yes, okay. Is let's say not really a method, but a way of seeing another perspective, things from another perspective, which is the word that you don't like, let's say, write it down on the paper. So can you make another word from it, or give you a synonym or an antonym? So it's changed the perspective. How do you feel that word? How, what does it mean for you? Forget about the dictionary definition. So there are a few small things that helps people think differently and see things differently.
Well, it seems to me that we move a lot now in the direction of innovation and how innovation happens. And that is a different and beautiful topic to explore. I might know a bit about Vlad to say that there might be a very interesting topic for him, and you're challenging him on something that he can talk for a very long time. And I would go back to Basav and ask, what would be from your perspective as VUCA 3.0? Talking about innovations, yeah, move forward with what I get.
I've already confessed my inability to be clever with words, so I don't know is the answer. But again, I mean, this VUCA 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0, there is an implicit assumption here that if you move to 2.0, you're leaving 1.0 behind. But that is not true. You will continue to have uncertainty and complexity and ambiguity. And within that ambiguity, you've got to navigate your community offerings or your courage or whatever else it is. So there are different elements that need to come into play every time something changes. And that is constantly evolving and is differently evolving for each of us. We just have to be aware of it. We just have to be conscious of it. And we have to understand that it is up to us we can use. There are many tools available that we can use, but eventually it is up to us. Nobody is doing this to us. You know, it's very easy to play the victim here and say, oh my God, in this pandemic, I've got screwed. And maybe you have that. I'm not dismissing the seriousness of what's happening around at all. But eventually it has to be up to us. So yes, I'm sure you'll have VUCA 3.0 and 4.0 and God knows what. But that does not in any way imply that VUCA 1.0 has gone away, as long as we are conscious of that.
That's a beautiful reminder that things evolve, but it doesn't mean that they dissolve. So they transfer.
See, you're clever with words. Maybe you can come up with something.
Wondering if anyone comes, or Owen, I take it that it's a hand up. You wanted to add something?
It is. This has been very, very interesting. The same thing, although it's interesting, it's not new, because I think Cristina knows my history. I was in the military for 22 years. Okay. Now the pandemic came along and it really wasn't man-made. It was a natural phenomenon that came into our lives, everybody's lives worldwide. That we could do absolutely nothing about. And it is the pandemic that has been controlling us. It's confused quite a lot of people. But when we come back to VUCA, I recognise VUCA from a long time ago. We talked about coping. Everything, or 95% of what Basav has actually talked about, and I'd like to talk to him on a one-to-one sometime, is the fact that it is up to us, okay, as individuals. We're part of society. One of the things we mentioned, social capital, or even social, it's to do with individual and society. We make up society, but we've got to be an individual as well. And therefore it's taking the accountability and the responsibility to be responsible for ourselves. We talk about uncertainty in quite a lot of ways. And uncertainty you can't measure, but risk you can. But when we go out that front door, when we're allowed out, it appears that everything hasn't changed. Bloke pops out or a rabbit pops out our life, we've noticed that. And it actually has to do with knowledge as well. My knowledge of 22 years of being, how can one put it, in combat ready mode, has been able to deal with this, with the crisis, in a fantastic way. I've coped using past history, and that refers back to what Basav said earlier. It's we're taking things from the past to help us move forward, whether it's a crisis, a man-made crisis, or a natural crisis like COVID. So it's utilising those resources that we've got from the past to help us move forward. We've got to let go of some things, as Basav quite rightly said. And I just find the whole thing fascinating, because I've actually, with my wife, we've actually utilised a lot of the past, the past history of myself and what we did before, and it's still some of it's working, other things are not working, but I'm still learning something new every day. So Basav, I really thank you for bringing both Vlad and the thing about VUCA, bringing it up, and the alternative to VUCA, vision, understanding, community, and being adaptable, I think is a very, very good step forward. Okay, but I really have enjoyed this morning, because I think it's important to recognise that we're all in. They say we're all in this together. I sometimes I don't like the phrase, but we're there to help each other. We're there, but we're there primarily to look after society and society to look after us. And I actually think that Basav and Vlad have put on, or I know Basav has been responsible for a lot of the talk, but I just feel that this, for me, has come at the right time as well. So, and I'm learning from it. And the thing is, how far have we talked about, Basav talks about the unknown. How far has our knowledge got, how far have we penetrated the unknown? Because the unknown itself is vastly superior. Not superior is not the right word. There's more of the unknown in our lives than there is of the known. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. It's taking us to, the more we know, the more we actually understand that we don't know.
You know, the chief of the US Patent Office in the year 1900 said that we have invented everything that could possibly have, we could possibly have invented. So he's got a bit of egg on his face, I guess.
Yeah, I think he has a lot of surprises every day. Anyway, looking at his patterns from this perspective, yeah. I was wondering, Basav, because this is one thing that I pick up from it, when it probably might be linked to a professional mistake, failure somewhere, but I pick up a lot of this nonverbal cues, and I know you came very towards the camera earlier when Owen was talking about military and how that has impact also on uncertainty in society, in communities and things like this. I was wondering if there's anything that came to your mind from what he was mentioning.
The reason I kind of came forward was to check the messages on the computer. It's not very complex. No, but I mean the military is I mean that's where the VUCA terminology came from, right? It came from the military, and I mean if you think about it, you can't get more VUCA than them. But again, I do want to emphasize that, you know, although we are not in the middle of a war all the time necessarily, that does not take away from the fact that VUCA can be very much part of our lives all the time. Because it doesn't matter what the external environment is, it is what is inside your head that is creating that uncertainty. And you can do that in the most stable of environments. You can still be uncertain. If you're starting off as an entrepreneur, as Liviu said, there is a huge amount of uncertainty, even if the environment is stable, right? So it's not that once the environment stabilizes, VUCA, you know, you can brush your hands of VUCA. It'll creep back in your brain in some shape or form. Yeah. And you still got to know how to handle it.
Yep. That sounds to me also a bit in the direction of a summary of what we've covered, because exactly those components of making sure that it doesn't go away, but it transforms, that it has a component of your internal environment on the external environment. And looking also at the time, and would be wonderful if we can already kind of like summarize and figure out what each of us take from these discussions. What are the elements that you feel like they were important, and they were maybe those small nuggets that we can think about them and self-reflect. Any thoughts on those one? And now this comes this uncomfortable moment that you have to be comfortable with until somebody puts on their mic.
I think I take the phrase that it's up to you to handle the situation, whatever uncomfortable it is, but it's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Bogdan, I think earlier you've unmuted yourself. There was somebody that unmuted also, so.
For me, the best, if I was to pick a phrase, it's that VUCA is in your head. It's not in the environment. Mm-hmm. So basically, it doesn't exist. It's I'm not sure if by name Basav has an Indian origin. So it's exactly like Maya in Indian philosophy.
Right.
There is no VUCA. It's just the world you live in right now. And I love this. VUCA, it's in your head, not in the environment.
Yes, Livia, it's Basav, Livia. Yeah, it is in your head. It's your response. I think it was the philosopher Goethe said, I realize it's something like I realize that basically it is my response whether I create war or I create peace within my, so it's really the response to, it's really your response or how you deal with the situation. And a lot of it is in your mind. So, and I think we all have a lot of courage. We've got to have a lot of courage, not only for what's been said today, but the response that we take and we think about. We talk about change, and all our lives have changed, whether we like it, and they change every day anyway. But the biggest thing I find is we mentioned choice in this thing, which means to say we can go down path A or path B or path C. And it's up to us, it's up to our decision whether we want to actually take that road or take that road. And the decision and the choice at the end of the day is just a decision, it's just a judgment. So when I look at it, it is our response to how we deal with it. And it's just, to me, choice is just as important as recognizing that we all change. We're forever changing, we're forever evolving. So it's how we want to deal with it as an individual. And another part could come into, do we have and we have our own authority in lots of ways to actually make the right choice and doing the right thing in the right circumstances, not just for yourself, but for society as well.
I do believe that all the concept, the VUCA concept, starts with the fact that there is some certainty, something stable, something simple, and there is not. I don't believe that there is certainty in life. As someone said earlier in chat, words create worlds. So I do believe that if we give to VUCA a body, I don't know, if we put it like it is something heavy, we will treat it like that. I do believe that VUCA as a concept is very good because we are aware of the fact that nothing is certain, nothing is stable and simple. But I I don't believe that we have to take it as a war concept. It's not good to stay, it's not good to feel safe in something and to stay as is a stable environment, because when you are taking it like that, you are not growing, you are not changing, you are not aware of the whole environment. And the whole environment is volatile, uncertain, complex, and of course, ambiguous.
Thank you so much. Any other last thoughts that anyone has? You can also put them in the chat. I realize that some of you might not be able to talk, maybe you're in the office or in a kind of other space, so more than happy to collect them also in there. And looking now at also the time, in the sense that we have about 10 minutes, and I would be curious, Basav, to also get your view on summary of what we've covered today. And after that, I have one more question for you. Now going to be with letters. It's okay.
No, again, I mean, it's difficult to summarize something that we have to learn to live with every day. You know, I think if we can accept that any thoughts that we had about predictability and certainty were really an illusion that we had created for ourselves, this period would be a good lesson for that. You know, and if we acknowledge that and internalize it and understand that, look, uncertainty has always been part of our life. Our lives have been complex. There have been periods of volatility within that, and ambiguity is something that exists all around. We've lived with it. We've navigated it all our lives, perhaps unconsciously. But what it should tell us is that we can do it because we have done it. So, you know, there is no, whilst feeling overwhelmed about these situations is understandable, it is equally possible to get out of it too, because all of us have done it at different stages of our lives. So there's no reason for us, I mean, obviously the degree of severity might change at different points, but conceptually our lives have never been predictable and certain and clear and simple. You know, whose life has been? So again, it's a matter of degrees, and it's a question of climbing out of that feeling, really.
Thank you very much. And what I had in mind was you started with a story.
Yes.
I was wondering if we can move now towards the end also with a story.
So,
give you a minute.
Let me talk about a moment of extreme uncertainty in my career, right? It's you know me, Cristina, that my background, like yours, is also in finance. So I was a boring old accountant at one stage of my life. But at some stage, my company wanted me to, or moved me out. I guess they realized I was quite hopeless in finance, so they finally moved me out. And they wanted me to manage our operations in India, right? So I was in London at the time. They sent me to India to manage our operations. So I moved in there, and it's a very technical company, right? It's an engineering company. And in accounting, I don't know which accounting class you went to, but in my accounting class, they did not teach you geophysics and geology, right? So, and that was the business of the company. So I went there, fine. I mean, the company had obviously had that confidence in me because they moved me there, but there was obviously a feeling of huge uncertainty within me. that, you know, what the hell am I doing here? I'm an imposter, really. You know, I don't belong here. And to underline that uncertainty, the first client meeting I had, the client wanted my opinion on Robert Maxwell's electromagnetic theory. So I said, this, you know, certainly proves that I'm really an imposter and in the wrong place. So, but things all, you know, from that low, things tended to get better after that. So that's my other story. Uncertainty exists all the time. And it's, again, I think Liv, you picked up on this, but it's within us.
Such a beautiful story, such a beautiful story, and reminding us that at the end of the day, it's on us to figure out, what do I want to take out of this experience? Go pack and say, it's not for me, or say, I'm at the, you called it as a low, and from here I grow, and I pick up, and it was the reason why I'm here. So it's really nice as a way of thinking for the fact that it's Friday today, and how the week should look like that comes along, that takes you a step forward, right? No matter what situation you are. So, cool. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Vlad, you wanted to say something, so please go ahead.
Yeah. So we started this day with a team coaching session, and one thing that we take from that, it was the team need to have. It was a board and it was a bit stuffy, and they said that they want to not forget to have fun from time to time as much as possible. And I realized, listening now, that actually with Cristina we construct this festival based on binary or polarity idea, and when we talk about something, we think, and for us it's easier because we make fun of this. How can we provide a different view, an opposite view of what we just talked? We talk, for instance, with coaching association, and then we go to talk with people which are not affiliated to any association. And now I was thinking, we are talking with Basav about the VUCA, and what can be in the opposite of VUCA? What can be a different approach of this? And it was very funny, and it's an opportunity to say hello to Adriana. Maybe not many of you know about her, but yesterday I talked with Cristina that we should do something about theater and improvisation in coaching, and this is something that I think it's somehow complementing VUCA in a funny way and in a useful way as well. So from my point of view, this is what I taken. There is something in the system that is signaling us the right way, and I want to appreciate first Basav for the main contribution and the presence of each of you, and I wish you a very nice weekend and sunny spring.
No, thank you, Vlad and Cristina, for having me and allowing me to share some of my thoughts. And for the rest of you on the panel, I'm hoping it has helped you in some way. And I'd love to continue this conversation one-on-one if you wish.
It was indeed a pleasure, Basav, and I'm really happy every time when we get to have you on some discussions, because it always brings a lot of, for me at least, a lot of thoughts that I use them the next 2 weeks to do really self-reflection and think about what is it that it was in there that caught my attention. So thank you so much for this kind of opportunity, and definitely I look forward to the coaching in a VUCA environment 2.0, also to capture Paul's thoughts and input and his experience, because as far as I know from both of you, you have a huge mountain of stories of contribution when it comes to leadership, and a lot of things that we all can learn from it. So thank you so much, and we look forward to that.
Cu plăcere.
Ce frumos, mulțumim, Basav. Weekend frumos atunci, and see you soon.
La fel.
Basav, before we go, I've got another meeting to go to, so this one-on-one, could it be done at another time?
For sure. No, absolutely. Just reach out to me, and with pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed for your time. And thank you very much for a very, very interesting 1.5 hours. I've learned a lot. There's some stuff that I totally agree with. 99% of what's been said. And I remember something about coaching in a number of ways. It's about navigating the sea of possibilities. Going from uncertainty to possibilities, or opportunities, as we say. So if we think Livu's experience on the Atlantic, that's what you were doing, wasn't it, Livu? So thank you very much, and take care, and all of you have a very, very pleasant weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Bogdan, Owen, Liviu, and Basav.
Thanks so much to everyone. See you soon at the second version of it. Take care. Leave us your thoughts and any questions in one of your 2 channels, and we'll pick them up for the next discussion.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.